My name is Marcus Orrin Williams. Wouldn't you rather be called Buster instead of Marcus? Well, I was. I was born in Mount Dora, 1914. I'll be 87 this month. Have lived here in this area, Mount Dora, Eustis. Went through the 9th grade in Mount Dora. Had to transfer to Eustis. My father died and we moved in with my grandparents over in Eustis. Been in this area except when I was off to school or the war or a job in New York City. I spent all of my life here. And it's been an amazing life. I wouldn't trade it for anybody's if I could. Mount Dora School was run by D.D. Roseborough. And when I tell you run, it was run by him. He had a big hand, and he put it on many a butt to get them straightened out. He was very, very disciplined. There was no smoking, period. There was only 2 or 3 of them that wanted to smoke back in those years, but he wouldn't let them. And you got kicked out of school, and Prof was pretty smart, real smart. When it came for state test time, he excused those that didn't make normal good grades. So he ended up with a pretty good grade. Prof was a lawyer. He came down here from Tennessee, and he and I got along real good. And I told him I was going to transfer to Eustis. He said, that's all right. I think I was having trouble with the teachers. The teachers weren't having trouble with me. I'll get that straight. But life back in those days was very simple. Transportation were your feet. I was lucky I had a pony, and I could get around a little faster than the rest of them could. The school teachers were good. We had an English teacher, Mrs. Taylor, married a Laney. And my wife, who is an English major practically, said, Buster, I went up to the school the other day, and there she was explaining some part of the English language to the class, and she stayed outside the door, and she says, Buster, I have never heard a presentation as wonderful as she put on. I said, well, she'll do that on every part of English that there is, and if you listen and do it, you'll get it. The kids from Mount Dora that went to the University of Florida didn't flunk out on account of English, if any of them flunked out. She was really, really good. I only had her 1 year, and I regretted it. But there wasn't much entertainment except what you could get at your own around here. There was a picture show downtown. The old building still stands. You'll see where it says Princess Theater down there. The balcony was a good place to do a little smooching. And there were 2 drugstores in town. My father had one of them, and another fellow. There was 1 grocery store in town that I remember for a while. Then we had 2. As I'm talking, you think of questions and ask them real quick now. Okay, go ahead.
How'd you get a name?
Can't hear you.
How'd you get to be named Buster?
How'd I get the name Buster? I wish I knew. I don't know. I think I was a buster getting around, busting into things and so forth, and it was picked up. My mother never told me why. or anything. So, but
I think this would be a good reason why. Once you pass this picture around, you see you couldn't be called anything.
give it to her. She's intelligent looking there. All right, some more questions. That was a good one.
Where did the school was all? Where you went to school in Mount Dora, everything was up there in Roseboro? The whole school, all 12 grades?
At one time, the playground area, which is due north, up on that street up there, Clayton Street, was one big old two-story building, and that was it. That was the school thing. There may be some pictures of that in there. There is a great big picture of that school building that was out at the the Mount Dora Country Club when they started developing it. And then they built what is now Roseboro, or was Roseboro, and we all moved over there. I think about the third grade, so that would have been about 1916 but I think it was 1920, 1920 before they built that building. And then the gymnasium was built after the war, and then another section was built on there. Okay?
Did you have any involvement or do anything during the war? Anything?
Did I have what?
World War II, what did you do? What'd you do in the war?
World War II. Well, I went to Gainesville, University of Florida, and I also took military training. They call it ROTC, because they paid you to do it, and there was just about enough of us there to, and if you passed, you got a second lieutenant's degree, and you had to go to camp and stay at different training things and so forth. And there was, I think, one or two over the ratio that they had was going to go. And there was a boy in front of me named Williams, and both of us down at the bottom of the list, and he decided he didn't want to take it. And I said, well, I'll take it. And that's one of the smartest moves I ever made in my life. When the war broke out, or they started getting ready for the war, pre-war situation, and I'm trying to think now to get it in proper order. I had been working in New York. I had graduated from college and graduate work at Cornell, and I worked in New York a year with a chain store. But I came back to Florida in 1940. In 1941, I was working in Lakeland with the Florida Citrus Commission, and I was reading in the Produce News that the Army was going to start up. They'd already started building camps and everything. They had to have a marketing center to buy the produce for the Army. In the old days, the sergeant in charge of the food for every company was buying food. Well, you get a whole nation full of Army, you got everybody bidding against each other. So they set up this 29 different buying agencies, and I had a friend in Washington. I said, go over there and tell them. I said, don't call them that my qualifications. Well, the next morning I had orders to report to New Orleans, and once I got there, I was there about 2 or 3 months for some training, and then they sent me north to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. There was Camp Shelby of 100,000 out there, and there's a Camp Claiborne in Louisiana and another one in Louisiana with a lot of people, plus a lot of Air Force training camps around that had to have food. And I was officer in charge of the office and had a civilian there. And our headquarters was in Chicago, and we took the orders from them. There was a secretary already hired when I got there, and she already had a boyfriend, so she told me she knew the exact woman for me. No doubt about it. Well, we ended up getting married to this girl that she introduced me to, and my wife still speaks to her, and I do too.
There's your picture.
And got in trouble during the war. West Point people, regular Army, that's their heyday. They studied for it all their life, and they got in there, and that was it. I got caught between two of them. One wanted me out at the camp instead of in town, and my own boss. I was my own commanding officer. So he found out who the buddy was in Chicago, and we were transferred to Camp Ritchie, Maryland, which turned out to be a military intelligence training center. And we were the quartermaster there, and promotions were real fast, and I luckily got to be a lieutenant colonel, and the boys that were still in those 29 offices, as high as they got, was a captain. And we had 2 children born while we were up there. Camp Ritchie was cold for me anyway. And my job was to get equipment and supplies, send out with intelligence teams, ones that could talk the language. But the whole thing back of that was that the British and the East Trading Company had men and language all over the world and trading for supplies and so forth, and the English ran the world at that time. And in the war, they had the same advantage. They had trained people that could interpret these guys and bring the information back, and they wouldn't give it to any other of the countries, Americans. So we had to get our own interpreters and send them over there and get back the information as to what was going on. That's a good question. Did I answer the main part of it?
Did you serve overseas?
No, I was very, very lucky, and damn it, I lost a brother overseas who born 1921. He should not have been sent over there. He was in the AST program, which they took him out of college and educated him, had him. But then when the bulge came, they just shipped everybody over there, and he was killed at the Battle of the Bulge.
You said you had a brother. Do you have any other siblings?
Have any other brothers or sisters?
Okay. That was the youngest brother, and there was a brother, Harris, who Steve visited. He was with the diplomatic corps and was stationed mainly in Spain, and he had been down in other countries around there and so forth. And then I had a sister who married a druggist and was living over in Melbourne. Okay, that's a good question. Some more?
Was Mount Dora downtown? Was it really busy?
Was downtown Mount Dora, or what was it like?
It hasn't changed much, except a hell of a lot of more cars. There used to be horses and mules down there.
Tell me how you used to take the cows down.
Do what?
Tell me how you used to take the cows downtown.
Oh, there was a dairy downtown on the corner of 3rd Avenue and Donley. That's a parking lot in there now, and Dr.
Andrews.
Who? Andrews and the others had an office in there. But years ago, that was a place where they milked the cows. The Bible school was the closest field to keep them in. So every day they had to be transferred from if they were out there, bring them down, and you cross Donnelly Street. There wasn't any traffic on Donnelly Street, and if you'll notice, there's a kind of a little gully down through there, and it would come right down to the end of the street down there. And then they kept them there at night, and then the next morning they took them back out to the Bible school area. And having a pony, I could get in on some of the cattle drives that I figured they were. That's a good question. The rest of Mount Dora was just about like it is right now, except for the grocery stores and drug stores and things like that instead of all these others.
Was it dirt road?
Were they dirt roads?
Yes, until I think there's some pictures in there somewhere shows when it was. They had motorcycles then, and I remember the crazy fools going around on sand on a corner on motorcycles. You don't know where you're going to end up, and they would end under the cars. The cars were very high above the ground, and what was the rest of that now?
What were the roads like?
They were muddy, and then at one time they treated it with oil, and then if those pictures are not in there, I'll give them to you, showing where they were paving it. And all of these cars, big wheels high off the, not real high, but high compared to now.
The Renaissance, was that a hotel?
Yeah, you know the Renaissance building downtown?
Yeah.
Was a hotel then?
Yeah. That was a hotel.
And the movie theater you mentioned, is it on 5th but south of Donnelly, but there's an ice cream shop or something in there?
Yeah, it's on 5th west of Donnelly. Mm-hmm.
Next to
The
Dickens Reed, yes. Oh, okay.
And Dickens Reed was Parker's Market for a long time, where the bookstore is now.
There, and Hale's Market was across the street from the jewelry store now, approximately across from there. And at one time further back than that, Simpson had a grocery store on the corner of 5th and Donnelly. I don't know exactly what's in there now, but Jack Simpson's mother and dad ran that store. And they did the first delivery in town.
And how did that work for groceries, to have your groceries delivered?
What'd she say?
How did it work to have your groceries delivered?
I don't know how they did that. They phoned them in. I'm telling you, we were modern. and Jack Simpson delivered them around town to certain people because transportation just wasn't there. You get on foot, that's all there was to it. Yes?
I grew up in a North Florida town. It's very small.
Well, about the same.
About like Mount Dora, and this was when I was a child, would have been the early 40s. And I remember my mother calling one of the local grocers and ordering the groceries. We were on a party line with a neighbor about 3 or 4 houses up the street from us. And if that lady was on with the grocer, well, my mother would just wait her turn.
Made a career.
Oh yeah, your career, what you did.
Okay. My name should have been Lucky Buster instead of, or just Lucky Williams instead of Buster Williams. Living with my grandparents, they were citrus growers. And after my father died, we just had to move over there. And I remember going to the groves with him. He even let me drive the mules. The tractors hadn't even come in back in those days. And grandmother was very, very smart. These citrus buyers would come by, and they knew the time of day to come was generally after they got through eating the evening meal. And she would let me go in there, but she said, "Buster, don't open your mouth. Listen." I guess I had a big mouth, so she wanted to keep it quiet. And I would hear these deals and things and so forth, and I'd hear what Grandpa would say, and I said, something doesn't ring right. They wanted to buy your fruit. They didn't want to pay for it then, and they didn't want to pick it right then. Well, if a freeze comes, whose fruit is it? Still belongs to the grower. Well, Grandpa said, oh no. When you're ready to pick my fruit, you come back here with the money and you can buy it. There are a lot of big packing houses in this area. I mean big ones. That there's a lot of fruit around here since the 70s and the 80s freezes came through here. But anyway, Grandfather told me one day, I think he was getting a nickel a box for a two bushel box of grapefruit. He said, Buster, don't get in the growing business. Get in the selling. Well, that stuck. So I made up my mind when I went to the University of Florida, going to the agricultural school, and I was going to get into marketing. And that's exactly what I did. I had some real good teachers, and we did field trips. And then I decided I wanted to do some more work. I wanted to get a job in New York City, because all I heard was all these people down here bitching about the people stealing the money from them in New York. And so I went to Cornell, and I took a course in farm management that was fabulous. And it really showed you the obligations that a farmer had, and he had to have luck to get the money to pay him off, is all there was to it. And I had made up my mind I wanted to get into the selling. I had visited selling places here in Florida and different other states. So I got into the marketing of fruits and vegetables. And when I came back here after the war, I was buying for a chain store in New York, the one that I worked for before the war. And that didn't last very long because I wanted to expand out. So I went in business for myself, was selling a lot of citrus. All of a sudden concentrate came. I mean fresh citrus. All of a sudden concentrate came. Well, you can't row a boat upstream. Everything was going to concentrate, as you can see it is now. So I got out of that and got into the vegetable business, and about that time the land out of the Popka started being developed for produce, and I had about 5, 6, 7 different growers out there. Duda and Zelwyn Farms had 2 big outfits, and I had most of the smaller growers. And we were all split about 1/3 each. And we sold corn all over the United States, all the way to California and whatnot, and Canada and whatnot. And carrots and cabbage in the southeast and the northeast. It's freight rates from different places affect the price of what the commodity will be in those areas. So I got to do what I wanted to. I did it long enough till they shut this out here in '98. I was about ready to quit anyway. Had a very, very, very lucrative business, and an enjoyable business. Did a lot of traveling in the summer with my family. It was about 6 months of working. Really 8, but the pressure came from right now. The corn's growing around the area. Scott Farm still has it out there. Did that answer that pretty good? I was very, very lucky.
Okay, now what happened to your leg?
What?
Leg.
My leg? Let's see how we're going to start that. Steve wasn't born when this happened. He was born after. He was an afterthought on that. We were going to Daytona Beach in mid-April, and Mark and Sam, who were about 11 and 12 then,
That's my older brothers.
his older brothers, had a brand new car, and got over to the land, and they wanted a drink. You normally put the drinks in the back seat. Because we had a new car, I put them in the trunk. Mistake number one. And usually would send the older boys, Mark, to get things, and thank God I didn't do that this time. I got back there, I had the drinks in my hand, I was pulling the top down, and a nurse came by with 3 people in the front seat of the car trying to kill a damn bee, and crashed into the car and caught my leg between the 2 bumpers right there. And it was a sight to behold, and Mark and Sam were sitting up on the bench up there, and Gene was telling me about how bad it was. A doctor came by and put a tourniquet on, and about that time the ambulance came along and picked me up to the hospital. I was in the hospital 4 months, flat on my back. It broke it up here too, the snapback, but it took it off down here, and then I had to have a corrective operation because there wasn't enough stump to hide it, and got it taken care of. I'm getting along pretty good, but I'm not getting old, I'm getting older. And it's sometimes, now when I get up from here now, it's going to be a problem. I will hang on to this, and I hang on to this. It's on there by suction. Has a little old valve here that you put it on with, and you can't pull it off now. But when I get up, it will loosen up from this position, and it'll fall off if I don't stand there with it and go back down in it again, pump it as I call it, and it'll eventually grab it, and then I can go off slowly. Steve can't understand why I can't walk faster. And the question that was asked a while ago, while you were out of the room, I wish you'd get out of here. I can get some questions.
I'll just go away.
You heard I said it's 4 months flat on my back over there in the hospital. So when we got home, had to do some catching up. And that's it right there. What are you crying about? Oh, Lordy.
Please ask your questions. Don't be intimidated because I'm sitting here. What were some of the questions you asked?
All right, this group has asked some questions. That group we had before didn't ask any questions, but this bunch is asking them. Now, come on, because
Good group.
if you get me started on a subject, I can, okay.
Did you have any other jobs besides the orange picking? The selling?
Any other jobs you had? I'll tell you, the dances, you put on dances.
Do what? Oh! We did dance around here. High school, when we were still in high school, it was about the time the black bands were being accepted. They hadn't been up until that time. Now this is back in the 30s, 30 to 34. There were good 5-piece bands around, and there was a country club between here and Eustis, and it was called the Lake County Country Club. And a friend of mine here in town, Millard Reed, had a Standard Oil filling station downtown. We set up and started promoting dances. And one day we were sitting on the bench downtown near the bank counting our money, and George White, the president, come by and says, "You guys are making more money than I am." But people you could make maybe $5 in a week. And that would get you enough to buy a pint of whiskey and some things and gas in the car and feed her a hamburger at intermission. And we'd get around 100 couples out there at this Lake County Country Club, and we could do that about every 2 weeks. And I also made money in the chicken business. I got into that, let's see. What's the gizmo up here? Are they one on the corner?
Highland, yeah, what's that called now? That little
Restaurant and beer place on the corner up here.
Highland.
Oh, Jeremiah's.
Jeremiah's. Right next there was a place, a man named Vaughn lived there. And I had chickens when I was young. And he came out, there was a chicken show going to be on in Eustis. So he came out to help us select, and he selected a beautiful black and white Ancona hen, and he told my dad, he says, that chicken will win best in the show. Well, I said, what the hell is he talking about? He don't know what it is. Well, boy, it did, and I went plumb crazy. I had to have chickens night and day. And I not only raised the Anconas, I had the Blue Andalusian. I figured out how to make money in these shows. And I shipped them as far to Tampa and Atlanta and took them to the other places around here. And I had a real good education. When I got to Gainesville to take a poultry class, hell, I knew more than the professor did, because I had been living with him and I mean really living with him for 4 years. He knew the commercial end of it, and all I knew was the prize winning and taking care of them and packing them up and go and pen them. That was a good question. That was the younger days, and then after the war it was nothing but selling. Marketing, I called it. All right, you're about time due for one now.
You folks in the back, wake up. Here's
There's
one.
one.
What was the clothing like when you were young?
What'd you wear? What kind of clothes when you were a kid?
You know, that's the last thing I thought of. I guess we wore overalls and slacks and shorts. There wasn't too many shorts back in those days. Still, those were the days when the women had to be covered and the men better be covered, or I don't know how you'd want to place that, but she knows what you used to wear out in West Florida.
How about shoes? You didn't have sneakers, did you?
No. You had one pair of shoes and you went to the repair stuff to get them fixed. Stand there and wait. All right, come on, some more. Every one of you got something on your lips and you're scared to come out with it. You're afraid.
Don't be.
They just laughed over here that time. They won't laugh anymore if you ask a question.
How about a question? You two back there? And four back there?
Okay.
Do you have a favorite book?
My favorite book?
Favorite book?
I do a lot of reading.
Now you have really hit it on the head. I have one at home and I can't tell you then, but it's all economics. That's, you hear the name Greenspan? Well, when he talks and writes, I can understand what he's talking about. And I know a lot of stockbrokers that can't. Don't understand it and don't know what the hell you're talking about. But they're going to sell you stock when it's going down.
What about the music when you were younger? What do you remember?
Oh man, it was wow. The music was whatever was popular at the time. Lucky Strike days back then. You kids didn't hear that, but she did. And
Well, you can explain to them what that was if they don't.
yeah,
This is a learning situation.
right.
If they probably don't know.
They were Lucky Strike had a contest on you turn in the names. They were trying to get you to smoke cigarettes, but it was there was drinking, as you say, and there was sex, but I don't believe it was as well, I know it wasn't as open as it is now, which it should have been at one, but the word that was asked a while ago, if you said that, do you have sex, you'd liable to get your head knocked off if you brought it up at the dinner table. And I'm not kidding you. It was a taboo word, and I couldn't understand it. I just absolutely couldn't understand it. You got a good question? Look at him, look at him. Oh.
Do you have like lottery back then?
You didn't have lottery. That's pretty new.
No lotteries at that time. I forgot what kind of gambling they did have, okay?
What did you do for fun?
What did you do for fun?
For fun? Hell, I was fun myself. I didn't. Back in those days, you're trying to get around and ask some questions and you're scared to. You dated one, and both male and female that weren't involved honored that. If you broke up, it had to be between the two of you. There was nobody. I mean, it was borderline sometime maybe, but that's the way it was going.
So you had dances and you...
Yeah, and we had break dances. Well, most all of them were. For a while there, they were really popular. Everybody broke, even on the regular.
What's that mean? What is
break in.
Oh, break in. Oh.
Yeah, go tap them on the shoulder or kick them in the butt or whatever you want to.
You were on the school board here.
Oh, God, don't bring that up.
In Lake County for 16 years and right during integration. That was
yeah.
an interesting time.
16 years, 4 times. I had opposition twice, and twice I didn't have any opposition. And that was pitiful pay. It's still not right, but I think it's about 1/5 or 1/6 of what you're getting now. I remember something like $5,000 sticking in your head and you thought you were rich.
You're talking about school teachers.
School teachers, yeah. The school board was paid $100 a month, and I contributed mine to a fund to buy calculators. There weren't any calculators in the schools. And I said, oh my God, I can't believe it.
Do our current controversies within the schools and the board?
They were, but you didn't hear about them because you didn't have writers that are trying to get ahead or trying to hurt somebody or something. One was like this. Joe Jenkins, who was a former Tavares student and went to the University of Florida and was captain of the football team, was teaching at Umatilla, and he got cross with 2 or 3 of the school board members, or a couple of them, or the other one in that area, and the other, he got the other 2 to go along with him. So they fired him. Well, I said, wait a minute, something's fishy here, so I went to him, talked, and he told me what it was. So me and one other fellow from Groveland, the next election came around, well, we won and knocked 2 of them out, and then we got one of the guys on there, and we put him back in school, and then Joe ran for county superintendent and won the election. So that was quite a, but people in the know and that were interested heard about it, but it wasn't just spread all over. Glory, hallelujah. And there was a fuss and a fight when it came down to integration. Now there wasn't any question about that. There's a few people still living in Mount Dora won't even speak to me about that because I said, look, it's a federal law. It's not a county law. It's not a state law. It's a federal law. Get it over with. No, hold off. I said, to hell with you. So we just tried to get it done as quick as we could. Maybe not as smooth as we could have, but was a good question now. That's a good one. Some more? Okay.
Were there ever any fights or any violence at all, like when you were at school?
Were there fights or violence in school? Any kind of battles?
If it was, the principal got hold of your butt, and that was the end of that. We had a principal in Eustis, his name was Banning, one of the best men I ever knew. He and D.D. Roseboro. I'm lucky to have those kind of principals. And he came to Eustis, and it was we had a man there that was pitiful. And the principal expects you to stand up when he came up to your desk. Well, this old boy, I'll never forget it as long as I live. He sat there in the desk, and the principal told him to get up. He couldn't think that quick. He didn't get up quick enough, and the principal grabbed him out of there, and that desk just tore into 1,000 pieces. There was no more trouble in that school from then on, period.
We have time for about one more question. We're getting close to the end of our day, and buses are coming around. Who has a last question? Over here? Girls? Amanda, what's your question?
I don't have a question. You just told me.
What did she tell you?
I
Ask the
didn't tell her
question.
anything. She's been bugging me out.
Okay.
I ain't gonna ask her.
Ask the question.
She just wants to know what age they started having sex at.
What'd she say?
Okay.
Want to know what age they started having sex at?
Oh. Well, they used to say 18. I think now they say 13.
The rule was when you get married at that time.
Yeah, right,
Was the
yeah.
rule, whether people followed it or not.
That was the written rule and unwritten rule, but it wasn't very often followed.
One more question I'll ask you. Do you happen to still live in a house that you lived in earlier in Mount Dora?
Do I do what? Do I?
When you lived in Mount Dora? And
Every one of them. I know them. There's only one of them tore down.
They're still there.
There was a house back of the, what's the name of that church down there near the bank? The church right next to the bank downtown.
Yeah.
That building is torn down. When I was first born, lived in the what used to be Raybaum's hardware store down there, across from the eating place there.
Across from Eduardo's upstairs.
Upstairs was apartments. Then after that, it was on Alexander Street. Steve's been up there and seen that house. Then we moved back to the church, Congregational Church. Then after that, this house that's out here just the other side of the football field was where we were living in 1926 when my dad died. And we had been there about 3 or 4 years. We had a little dairy, and that's where I got my pony.
And how long did you live in the 3rd Avenue house? That's what he wanted to get to, isn't it?
I forgot.
We lived in
35 years.
Yeah, we lived in the house that Jeff lives in now for 35 years. That's what.
Hey, Jeff, I want to see when it hit there.
Okay, well,
Jeff came over here as just a little kid, and I haven't seen him since then.
he's one of my good students. Some days. Well, thank you very much for being our guest.
So thank you for asking me.